Good evening and welcome. I'm Lex Runsman of the Linfield English Department, and it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce a once and continuing esteemed colleague, wonderful writer and friend, Barbara Drake, a person who is more than anyone responsible for the current success of Linfield's creative writing major. She is an accomplished essayist, as her book Peace at Heart demonstrates. She has authored a widely used and important textbook writing poetry. But more important this evening is the fact of Barbara's new book of poems from Windfall Press, Driving 100.
Now, pushing another kind of limit. This is a story about a friend of mine, and I wrote it quite a while back, and I did send it to him. And he said, oh, fine, good poem, fine poem. You know, he's kind of more interested in his own work than anybody else's, actually. Thank you. A man I once knew. So I'll warn you, this is kind of a longish poem, but I hope you'll enjoy it. He was a college teacher, raised a Catholic boy by Jesuits. He liked to dress up in women's clothes. His first wife, a South American, said she was innocent. For all she knew, all American men were like that. They had 3 children. Later, he had an affair, divorced his wife, and married the younger woman. Then they also had 3 children, 2 fat little girls and a baby boy. His first 3 children started acting up, and the ex-wife married a librarian. One time, my friend came to our house to visit with when his second wife was out of town visiting her relatives in Minneapolis. He called and said, I'm all dressed up and nobody to parade for. So we said he could parade for us. We picked him up in our old ambulance, the car we were driving at that time. He was wearing his hostess skirt and a long dark wig, a sweater with rhinestones and a low neck, lots of jewelry, ankle-strap shoes. We had tacos for dinner, and he paraded around a bit, then ate some tacos. My kids said they'd never seen anything like it. Later, he took his family south on a Fulbright, one of many such honors he'd had. In Rio, he got a facelift to get rid of the wrinkles and dewlaps. He told me, I used to look good, but I got too fat, when he dressed up once and invited me over for a drink. His makeup was thick and white, and his whiskers were black and bristly, and until he grew his hair out and had the transplant, he wore untidy wigs at home, and long velvet skirts, and low-neck blouses, lots of heavy bracelets. In Brazil, he not only got a facelift, but also a hair transplant and had electrolysis on his beard. He said they cut the hair plugs out of the back of his head and moved them up front. He had to go around for several days with dried blood on his head and face till the plugs took. They used curare, he said, to do the job, and all the time he was paralyzed by the drug. He could hear and see, but they treated him as if he were a dead man. When he and his wife came back with the kids from Brazil, the plastic surgeon, who was a beautiful woman, came with them. She was fed up with being a plastic surgeon in Brazil, tired of moving hair, carving faces. She and his wife became lovers and started a business making hand-sewn ethnic clothes, which they tried to sell from a boutique across from the university. The ethnic clothes business wasn't so great. He wanted the surgeon to be a doctor again so they'd have more money. She studied to get her license in the United States and ended up working in the morgue at a local hospital, a plastic surgeon fixing up dead people. She got fed up with that too. Then his wife got mad and decided to leave him. She said he was crazy and tried to run over him with the car so he wouldn't get custody of the children. He said she tried to kill him but only broke his arm. Now he and the plastic surgeon live in the house alone. He's had several books published and is a full professor with tenure and a nice salary. What I want to say is, clothes don't matter to me that much. Fascinating guy, you know. Some people live life fully. Matters of faith. When I drive on the freeway, or especially on a 4-lane road with no divider, and travel believing that no one will come across the center line and run into me, it is almost like believing in something bigger than us all. A comet keeping to its path, the continuing power of the electric company, an oak tree not falling when you walk under it, God even. I think I wrote that because I had 3 car accidents and I was sitting still every time. I mean, I didn't have them, I was in them, where somebody, you know, sitting at a light, sitting at a stop sign. I thought, boy, you trust those idiots out there, you know, or not. One of the ways we push our limits in life is to get old, right? I mean, we keep getting older. I won't say old, right? But, so here's one that's kind of a weird subject, but it's sitting in a doctor's office for your annual checkup and thinking about life. The exam. Here I am, due for the annual probing. I sit in the examination room staring at the poster on the wall opposite. A woman, cigarette in her right hand, her insides carefully laid open and labeled, her hair a country and western big hair silhouette. The poster points out all the ways that smoking can kill you. Cancer here, cancer there. I'm glad I quit smoking. I think it was 35 years ago. I decided to trade smoking for other dangers, pierced ears and birth control pills. Etta Abrahams did the ears with an ice cube for an anesthetic and a needle out of my sewing kit. She told me she'd done it before, so I trusted her. Last night I dreamed about a boy I'd gone to a dance with 50 years ago. He's dead now, but in the dream when I said, "I thought you were dead," he replied, "No, I'm still here." We laughed. In the dream I felt happy. I don't remember if he smoked. Dying has been on my mind. Not that I plan on dying soon, but the lawyer said I need to make a will, and I put off doing it because I don't know how to go about it. So I bought a little kit, Last Will and Testament, with directions and a CD. It's odd in a way to set down directions to keep running your material life after you die. I wonder when that doctor is going to come in here and get it over with. I get good care. She's thorough, good at recommending specialists, takes her time talking about whatever's on my mind this year. Her eyes are so blue, maybe she has blue contacts. I saw her once shopping at Safeway wearing a blue coat the color of her eyes. She told me she lives in that house I drive by every day on my way to work. Seeing your doctor in the crackers and cookie aisle at Safeway and driving by her house is like running into my students in the real world. She lives in a nice house, though the yard is full of cars. I remember the cars that used to sit in our yard when I was with my first husband. He'd bring them home with good intentions of fixing them up, but never got around to it. Instead, he'd chop wood and stack it around the cars to disguise the fact that we had so many old cars in the yard. All those wood piles. People would come to our house and say, "My, you've got a lot of firewood." Once I lifted the hood on one of the cars, an old green Plymouth station wagon, and a rabbit jumped out. It had built a nest on the engine block. That woman with the cigarette in the poster somehow looks like a woman you'd see in a Western bar, the silhouette of her hair surrounding that exposed head full of sinuses, nasal passages, roots of teeth, the brain and eyeballs, one hand holding that cigarette, the other on her hip. If she weren't opened up that way, she might look like Loretta Lynn or Tammy Wynette. Cancer, cancer, cancer. It can pop up anywhere. Worse if you smoke. Time goes by. I wonder why I dreamed of that boy after all these years, and what happened to him. I just know someone told me he died. I hear the doctor now outside the door. Another year. I think I'm healthy. About that dance we went to, that boy and I, it's funny, I can't remember if we kissed or not. Have you ever seen those posters? Maybe they take men into the room with men posters, I don't know. And since I'm thinking of age and mortality, I will read a short poem called Another Birthday. It's only 7 lines long. I tell people when they're really short so that you can start listening early. Where does middle age stop and old age begin? I am making my way through the architecture of the ages. There goes Chartres. Hello, Stonehenge. This is an older poem that seemed to me to go into the book. It had been in a magazine, but never in a book. It's called Near French Glen. I've been thinking about French Glen because I haven't been out to Malheur lately. Any of you go out there? And it's really a wonderful place. And they're talking about putting windmills on it. If you don't know where it is, it's out in the southeast corner of the state, about as far as you can go from here. And it's great bird watching and plant watching and all of that. In early October near French Glen, the whistling swans maneuver in pairs on the ponds and lakes of Harney County. We get there late this year for cranes. Day before, over 1,000 sandhill cranes left for California, their winter grounds. According to my Audubon bird book, hunters shoot them in season. Not here, but in California. Sandhill cranes mate for life, as do the swans. Life for a crane may mean 50 years or more. Cranes, the color of ash or wet sand with red-capped heads. They go along 8 years or so, migrations, transmigrations, feeding, jostling, flocking, stalking the small frogs and other items of their menu without so much as laying an egg. Then all of a sudden comes the trumpeting call. Love, the rhythmic dance takes them. Love, smack of two halves join, if only cranes. If only, what am I saying? Amazing cranes to mate for life, taking that grand, implacable risk of being incomplete without the other in a world that shoots cranes. I wonder if that's changed, but the Audubon book I have says that. I think so. Whenever I read that, I think, maybe I better get a new book and see if that's still true. It's hard to believe for me.